season structure is something that is fundamental to the growth of the sport. But how do you qualify for the games this year? What's the learning process of introducing like this type of jump rope? You don't need, or in the opinion, you don't necessarily need more components of unknown.
Oh, Brooke Wella's.
Yeah.
Big news as well. Moving from proven to hard work pays off.
Yeah. I think the most notable or the hard one was when Sarah moved on. You know, like if Tia comes back, I mean, it would just be ridiculous. Like, ridiculous in an epic sense if she manages to come back and win Rogue. We are back in Mallorca. There has been lots of news this week. We have some updates to include in that as well. I'm very lucky to be joined by Vicky.
Always lucky to be with you.
Always. How have you been?
I have been pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I had a very short trip to Madrid.
We got one hug.
One, yeah, but it's very unusual to get any hugs during competition, so that was, obviously it was going okay at that point for you. Didn't get to Healthy Greens.
Honest Greens.
That's it, Honest Greens.
But Healthy Greens, maybe that's a new company coming out.
You are officially.
Yeah.
But I've been okay. What about you? You've been on holiday?
Yeah, we went to the Azores, which is like a group of islands just outside of Portugal.
Azores, not the Azores.
Azores. I'm not actually sure. My Portuguese is horrendous.
I actually struggled for a long time to even know where Portugal was. Okay. Geography is not my strong suit.
Okay.
What's it like?
It's very beautiful. It's described as like the Hawaii of Europe. So it's kind of jungle feel actually. Like it's interesting because obviously we're an island, but in the Med, and then when you go into the Atlantic, you go up north, you got like Iceland, very raw, still just volcanic rock. So it had that like kind of raw feel, but with a lot more vegetation.
I saw a couple of pictures on Jack's stories and it's very lush. Exactly,
yeah, lush. There's also like, especially marine life, got to see whales, dolphins.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
I've never seen a whale in the wild. I've seen dolphins here in Mallorca.
Yeah, that's true. They come in sometimes.
Yeah, they came in some in the bay in San Telmo where I live.
Yeah.
It was pretty special. But no dolphins in Madrid.
No dolphins in Madrid.
But plenty of upset and intrigue.
Yeah, I think, once again, like, they managed to do a great job. Like, I think like 2,500 competitors in the magic box. It was, which is no easy feat.
2,500 people.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
For a CrossFit event, like for a running event, kind of the single modality thing, it's fairly easy. With the CrossFit event where you have so much variance, it's very impressive.
To organise all those people and to stay on time is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're English, so we like on people being punctual and on time and organisation, that sort of stuff. But actually, if you've never tried to run an event, you've got no idea how difficult that is.
No, and people, so say you competed this year, like everything was on time, everything ran smoothly, and it, like events back in the day, I mean, even a few years ago, would just run late. It can kind of be like the worst thing for an athlete. Like you rock in early, you get delayed, and Madrid have managed to do a great job organising that. So, I mean, so very well done to them. And I think a really important point is that Europe needs these competitions. Like, there were people who came in from the States. We had like a number of athletes competing. And I think it's an important thing to be able to do to still bring that recognition to Europe.
There was Travis Mayer, Annika Greer. I had Los Niños.
Yeah.
Which was Noah Olsen, Chandler Smith, Sydney. How do I say her second name?
Michelin.
And then Lena Richter from Norway. They were so 1/4 European.
There's 25% European.
So not a huge amount of Americans, but
we'll take it.
Notable, because that always brings the crowd, doesn't it? At least you'd hope so.
Yeah.
But the attendance, the atmosphere was amazing in there. Everyone was very happy, lots of like excitable people. But I don't think I don't think that there was as much footfall as they needed or wanted.
No, I think this is a big thing. It's like how, and this isn't a question like just for Madrid. It's actually a question of CrossFit in general. It's like how do you increase like spectators? Like people.
Just trying to think about like, why do people follow football? Why do people follow rugby? Why do they follow golf? Why do they follow tennis? There's like drama and stories, and you get involved with it from a young age as well, don't you?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of, this kind of opens up this whole discussion of like format of a season. But I think a lot of those sports that you mentioned all have commonalities. One of which is like the length of
balls.
Yeah, the balls. Yeah, they all have balls. But there's always throughout the year, there's various like contact points. Like golf every weekend, pretty much you can turn on TV and see something. And so the sports it has that, but actually Madrid is only relevant to Madrid. Rogue's going to come up only relevant to Rogue, Dubai, Wadapalooza, all these major competitions. They're all standalone and they don't have any significance through the season. I think this is where the sanctioned season, people talk about it as like being good because it had some impact later on and you had more storylines. Say like we saw Karen and Lazar win Madrid. What if that's them going through to the games now?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, what an interesting storyline. There's already 2 places set. Like let's say Lazar, Karen, they both go to Rogue. They've already got their places, but they win, maybe it goes second place. You get like these interesting storylines throughout the year about something that's not just a standalone event. And so there's all these, I think that like a group of people need to sit down and have like a conversation regarding like how is this structure, what is the optimal structure for the sport of CrossFit?
Do you think that the reason why the sanctional events just don't exist at the moment is
the
sanctioned events, that kind of process that we did have for a little while? The reason why it got dropped was because it was too difficult to run, or it was what was the thinking behind it?
Well, I think that what happened was from 2018 to 2019, it was like complete change. Right?
Oh, it was that year.
Yeah, so you had like all the national champions, you had like the Open twice in 1 year, so you had these like this moment of just everything changed, and I think it was like. You didn't actually get to see if that season worked. You also had the trouble with that season is that led into COVID as well. So you never really got to see like the effects of that season. And then all of a sudden COVID, and then it's like, okay, 21 came back and they went more back to what was a traditional format.
So I wonder if we can like petition somebody.
Yeah.
Who do we write to?
Yeah, I think
Mr. Castro.
I think the season structure is something that is fundamental to the growth of the sport. And there are issues and things that can be improved or whatever it may be, but actually just having a legitimate structure that we can follow, have consistency. This year, like what we're going to speak about, they just announced the games location and the dates, which is useful. But how do you qualify for the games this year? We're mid-September. And we still have no idea about the qualification process of this season.
They did say this is a series of announcements. Maybe they're going to work backwards.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing, even like, it feels like even if they announce now, it's almost knowing years.
Yeah.
Actually, this is the structure that we feel is going to work. Here's the plan for the next 3 years of how you can qualify, whatever it may be.
It just feels like the organisation for the games hasn't had a chance to kind of settle.
No.
And we had Justin Berg, then we didn't have Justin Berg, and I think whilst we had Justin Berg, there was a feeling that maybe things were going to like start to kind of become more settled down.
Yeah.
But now that's changed again, and we're up in turbulent waters.
Which could be like things on repeats. It could repeat the same conversation since 2019.
I think we've had this conversation.
We have had this conversation since 2018. And I think like a clear vision of where things are going in the future is needed.
Yeah. But who do we write to?
info at CrossFit.
Yeah, a petition. So, okay, so I mean, your impressions of Madrid. We didn't have. We think that the competition was good.
Yeah,
as in the programming was good.
I think they did. I think that there are. So, I think again, it comes down to like certain things within CrossFit. This kind of higher up down approach, I think, can be very useful by setting the standard high. I think in general, like, it was like a CrossFit programming, and there were certain elements that were tricky. And one example of this is like adding in the new movement. So when you add in a new movement, we've seen it so many times that it.
Which one are we talking about?
This is like the mono double under. So they introduced a workout. They basically had to do in a 9-second window like 50 double unders
with a jump bar. They called it.
Yeah, the mono, like a mono, whatever name. But we've seen it in the adaptive categories, and I think it's like a fun addition to the double unders. The trouble was that a lot of athletes didn't get to lift in a lifting event. So actually, what started to happen was the placement of the workouts is very much affected by this kind of new element, which is maybe what was not being tested for the event. And that there's various ways it probably could have gone down differently. But what the trouble with these new movements is you end up testing just the new movement and not necessarily the element that you're looking to test.
Yeah. I mean, I watched that and I thought that it was very unfair, actually, the way that it was laid out. Because for the women who went first, they were all facing the way I was sat, towards me, and the line at the back, you could see that they didn't have enough room to skip properly because of the way that they were stacked on the floor. And you could see skipping ropes fouling against the wall, which obviously will make it difficult for them to get to the required number of jumps.
Yeah.
And then for the men, they allowed the men to face in the other direction. So there was more space, fresh air, clear air, like if Formula One terminology. They had like nothing behind them to stop the skipping rope from going round, which gave them. I mean, yes, it was the women on their own and then the men on their own, but a quarter of the female field was disadvantaged because they had a wall behind them. So, and then in the final section of the teams, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to, it seemed. Yeah. So I just think that surely that element should have been tested before or corrected in the moment.
The correction in the moment is always tricky. But you are right. And again, I think it comes down to is like, okay, so if you boil this down, start looking bigger picture, like we've asked this question before, what is good and what is bad programming? And there's no real answer to that question. Yeah. Was the programming good? Well, it's actually quite hard to answer because there's no real definition of what good programming is. There's no
True.
So you go, okay, was it good or bad? Well, actually, it's really hard to answer because there's no real criteria. It's just you go, okay, give your opinion if it was enjoyable or whatever it may be. And and then you can break it down into various categories. Like, did it include something long? Did it include something heavy? Did it include these things? But the trouble is, without a real definition of what good competition programming is, it's really hard to have answer that question. And this also comes down in, say, movement standards. What's the learning process of introducing like this type of jump rope? You go, okay, well, whatever it may be, that you have to be this far away from the stand. The trouble is we may never see this movement again in this setting, and therefore the learning process of this kind of becomes irrelevant. And so it's really hard to learn from the mistakes of the past. Whereas if you had this kind of some movements or standardizations of things, actually the learning process could be better and it could improve things in the sports in the long run. The big argument becomes about this unknown and unknowable element. But I was thinking about this the other day, like another analogy, right? So picture this.
I'm ready.
Triathlon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
I know it's work.
You know it's work. Fairly simple, right? You got a swim, bike, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got set distances.
Yeah.
Right now, how much variance could you actually add in just so this can become completely unknown and unknowable, right? You rock up to a triathlon.
Yeah.
And you don't know the distances you'll be doing. you don't know the order of it. You don't know if you're doing different rounds. You know, for example, you might do whatever, 100, 200 meter swim, 5K bike, 1K run, and you do that for 5 rounds. Or you do like a different order, whatever it may be. But the point being is that even within a very set criteria, you have so much variance. And so CrossFit, you know, I mean, the amount of legitimate options you have to choose from in order to create variance is huge. So it's like you don't need, or in opinion, you don't necessarily need more components of unknown that are already there and that could be standardized.
Yeah.
It's like the variance of just 3 movements with what you could do with like time domains, rounds, how they do them is huge. And so it's like, why add in more and more components, this variance, to make it really hard to follow the sport, to know what's going on? These things.
I just had a moment of realising why CrossFit isn't as popular as football. So because you don't have to play football to enjoy watching football. But I think in order to really enjoy watching CrossFit, you almost kind of have to appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah, and the simple things like, do you always, like, from a visual point of view, do you always start and finish on the end? And this is set, you know, this is like, you have this event, it always starts here, finishes here. And I think, you know, CrossFit have done a good job in identifying, okay, that's probably the like ultimate flow of how things could work. But then, like you say, the kind of these lifting events where everyone's lifting, it looks messy, it's hard to know what's going on. Like Linda at Senni's, like,
yeah, that was tough. It's like very confusing.
Yeah, super confusing, and they've kind of tried to compensate for it with the cone, all these things. But I think this is like, you know, a question or something that really needs to be solved for the popularity of the sport.
Okay, so I got to tell you that, did you see, I guess you'd already gone when Luka did their lifting on Friday night?
Yeah, because they had to delay them until 9.
It was so cool to watch Lazar lifting, and then he made his way, I think he lifted 150, and then Luka was on the other side of the field and on the floor, and he did this, and he was like, come on, I'm making the crowd, or like getting them all going. And it was so nice to watch him lift that, and then for them to see them celebrating. That for me was like a really happy moment on that evening, because it was frustrating to watch the women's and think, you know, this is not, you can see this is like some people that should have got to the lifts didn't get to the lifts because of what was going on. But there was a nice high point for Lazar and Luka that night. Yeah,
and I think that high point could have happened even with like, you know what I mean? I didn't need the high point could have probably happened in a style that was, you know, optimal for everyone as well.
Yeah.
You know? Be it ladder form or whatever it may be. And I think this is like, again, there's something we talked about before, this idea of having entertainment and the test.
Yeah.
You obviously need both. But actually, I think in terms of analysing, it's very important to look at them separately. You know, like, was this a good test? Or was this entertaining? Ultimately, they need to line up. But at some point, to do the analysis of it, it's like breaking them down into components. Yeah,
because I guess to program a competition like that, you do need to keep both of those in mind, don't you?
100%. The test, because ultimately you're testing fitness, and then you also need to make it entertaining.
I don't know much about Luka Vunjak because he's a program athlete, but I've not met him. So can you tell me a bit about him?
Yeah, so, you know, seeing Lazar, Luka, Lazar's brother, then there's also another Serbian.
Yeah, another Luka.
Yeah. You know, it's really nice to see all 3 of them interact. Sometimes within countries, people are very competitive.
Yeah.
so if, you know, however it may be, but these 3 guys are like super supportive. Like Lazar's
Kid boys are nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Vunjak boys are good too.
And so they're very supportive of like of Luka Vunjak and going through. He joined the program very recently. So a month ago or so it's kind of new to the process. But he's nice to have on board. He's already gained himself a nickname.
Oh yeah?
The Smile.
Oh really?
Yeah.
The Smile?
The Smile.
How come?
Because he's smiling a lot.
He's a nice, happy chappy.
Yeah, he's just happy to have around, very chill. So yeah.
Will we see him coming to camps?
Yeah, he's so we're running an elite camp at the end of October. Luka will be there, joined by quite a few other athletes as well. So we decided to run it during Rogue weekend because we're not going to head out to the States for this. So we'll be running the elite camp during that weekend.
It's going to be a bunch of FOMO watching going then.
Yeah, hopefully less FOMO. Yeah, do a good job.
Oh, it burns. The FOMO is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, horrible. Okay, so how did what can we sort of like expect from Luka? What's he like? What kind of athlete is he?
I think the nickname of the smile is there. I mean, Luka's been close. His goal is obviously to make it to the games, along with a lot of the athletes that will be at the camp. That's like for any competitive CrossFit athlete, the games is the pinnacle. So Luka's no different in that. Like again, most athletes, he has holes that need to be worked on. He's working with Chris, so hopefully they can smooth out those holes, and we'll hopefully see him do well this year.
Where does he live?
He still lives in Serbia.
So is he training full time, or is he working as a student?
So this is one big thing, is like he hasn't crossed the gap yet to be able to just train. So he's working quite a lot as well, which is obviously, it's a big thing. This fringe level of sports is very hard. Before you break through, you're going to have to like put in the work to get.
You really are.
No one's going to pay for that. Everyone wants to be there. No one's going to pave that way for you. So yeah, it's not like, especially making it is very tough. Like sports, it's not easy. And especially breaking through, like, Luka's early 20s, has to work full time, has to train with people who are training full time, or compete with people who are training full time.
Comparing himself to people that are not having to work full time.
Exactly. They can just sleep and eat. You have to put that extra bit of effort into breakthrough.
And that difference between, like, you wouldn't imagine, like, just in inverted commas working full time could take out so much from you, but actually it does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's huge.
It's huge.
The difference, could you see a point where he'll be able to do that in the near future, or is he going to have to like make real sacrifices in order to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, sports is relatively simple in lots of ways. Like you do better, you do better.
Yeah.
So if he can get the performances, he will be able to start becoming more and more free time.
It's a brutal kind of show business, sports, isn't it?
Yeah. And especially, people argue, say, like in CrossFit as well. I suppose like there's other things like MMA, UFC. I mean, that's even more savage.
True.
I think the hard thing with CrossFit is not knowing.
There's a Mallorca fight night coming up soon. Do you want to go?
Oh,
November.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in for it if you want to go. November the 3rd, I think it is, in Sonoma.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be a laugh. MMA and boxing and what have you. Lots of blood on the roads.
Nice. Yeah, that's true.
Well, we can all go and cover Johnny. So that was Madrid. I mean, I think I'm really happy to see Lazar win it again. I've got to say, I've got a bit of a soft spot for him. And Karen Freyova.
Yeah.
Dominant all the weekend.
Yeah, Karen, like, dominant. I mean, I think I think Karen has the physical ability to podium games, She's very good. She's, especially with the style of games, she fits into the bigger athlete mold, so she can lift heavy weights. She's got the requirements of gymnastics. Obviously, there's probably a bit more of a bigger hole, but then also has that conditioning. So it's like, it's the framework of the way the game is programmed now. Bigger athletes, good conditioning, has requirements of gymnastics. So I think that's, she's obviously someone who has that potential.
I don't have a Stetson. This is the closest I've got to a Stetson.
I don't know what a Stetson is.
Cowboys wear them.
A cowboy hat.
It's a Stetson.
Okay.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah.
Come on. I'm trying to make a point.
Yeah, I mean...
We don't own Stetsons, but next year... But
I do, actually.
We will have one.
Well,
where is it?
Yeah. Because of road. We've been there quite a few times now, down to Texas. So, I mean, it'd be fun in Texas. Like, you know, big Texas is a big thing.
Yeah.
Then I think big question everyone has is the heat.
Yes.
You know, like the average temperature is hotter than the temperature in August in Mallorca.
You don't want to go outside in summertime in Mallorca.
No,
It's horrid.
It's pretty bad. And
Well, unless you're going to lie under an umbrella all day and occasionally roll into the sea.
yeah, so it kind of brings into question the outdoor events, and do they do them basically before the sun gets up? It's probably the only option. But even still, it'd be hot. But obviously, you don't.
Terribly difficult to film.
Yeah, difficult to film.
Unless they're all wearing miner's lamps.
Not great for spectators.
Why have they chosen to go there? I mean, you and I and quite a few people have known that it's going to be there for a while because the rumours were abounding around games. But do you know why they chose to go there? What's the thinking?
So I think the game's at the stage now where, like, towns will bid to have it. You know, so it's like games go, okay, we want to change location, and then Dallas, wherever it may be, goes, okay, we would want to host you. Here's what we can offer, and so then the best offer comes up. I don't know. The thing is, I mean, I think Dallas, like Texas, is a good choice for many reasons. I mean, travel being the biggest one.
Is it going to be easier than getting to
100%.
Madison?
Because of Dallas, Fort Worth, you know, it's like a
Better airport.
Huge airports. We actually, for Row, we flew in there.
Can you fly direct from Madrid?
Yeah. So it's a good airport. But the temperature and outdoor events, like the other thing this year was like, did we have an off-site event? Not really.
No. And I felt we really lacked that.
Yeah.
I missed that. I thought this year's games was a bit...
You know, with the unknown element, but it's going to be hard to do like off-site with that heat. I mean, and that's just going to be. It's hot in October, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so last weekend of October for the Rogue Invitational, it's pretty hot there. So let alone in mid-August.
I really hoped that we were going to see it coming to Germany, for example, Berlin, because the Berlin semi-finals were amazing. That city's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, you know, I'd love to see it come to Europe. I still think like the biggest push at the moment is finding a legitimate structure for the season.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the biggest thing right now. Okay, they've got a location. I don't know how long they'll be at that location. Maybe they stay there a few years. But we still need a good structure for the season.
You know, we should ask Mr. Castro for an interview.
Yeah.
Should we try?
Yeah, we can always
got his number?
reach out. I don't know if I have his number, actually.
Let's try and get it. Okay, what else do we need to talk about? We need to talk about, Brooke Well's.
Yeah.
Big news as well. Moving from proven to hard work pays off.
Yes.
And seeing you as a coach and owner of a training camp, know what it's like when athletes move from one place to another, when you bringing them in and seeing them go away. It must be lovely to know, like, your thoughts on that process.
So I think, you know, I've had this happen like a number of times now. And I think the most notable or the hard one was when Sarah moved on in 2016, like end of 2016.
But you were a wee whippersnapper though.
As a whippersnapper. And it's just become a normal thing in the sport. So, you know, it's almost no surprise now that this time of the year we're going to see this person moving, this person.
Like the transfer window.
It's like a transfer window. And I think that the sport, it's just happened, you know, like people jumping around. Proven's obviously changed strategy, lost a lot of its big athletes, whatever's happening in Proven. But it's kind of spread out now to the two main US camps. You have Mayhem, hard work pays off. Like that is the two big players.
Do you really think Proven's like dropped down then? It's not as kind of popular?
I mean, I don't know which athletes they, like if we talk about competitive athletes, I don't necessarily know who they have. the biggest one will be Tia. You know, like if Tia comes back, there's still one place to announce for Rogue. I mean, if Tia comes back, I mean, it would just be ridiculous, like ridiculous in an epic sense if she manages to come back and win Rogue. I mean, that far after having a kid.
I wouldn't put anything past Tia, to be honest. I think she's extraordinary.
Yeah, she's obviously like an amazing physical specimen. So you would say if anyone in this world has the ability to do it, is probably Tia. But there is still one Rogue spot open.
Have you got your money on Tia?
There's 3 possible. It's like Hayley, Mal, and Tia.
Yeah, it can't be Hayley. I don't think she's ready.
Yeah, well, I actually don't. So we don't know if Mal's competing this season. So I think that I actually would say that the logical bet would probably be Hayley. But those are like the brogue athletes that aren't there. But
And it's not long to go now. It's October time.
It will be like 5-6 weeks till Rogue.
Okay. And then I wanted to know what you think about like the process for the athlete moving from one camp to another, because it can't be easy to make that decision, because you're obviously making close relationships with the people that you're with, that coached with, that you're training with.
So I think there's probably this decision of like the athlete feels there's more advantage than being somewhere else, and I don't think it necessarily has to be like a fallout or anything like that. It's just it has become a bit of a fashion of the sport. I mean, you know, I think like this 3 years is more or less when athletes start to change around. You know, Brooke was full comp trained. She was with another training program that was quite popular back in the day. I can't remember. She'd been comp trained for around 3 years, then proven for around 3 years. Now hard work pays off. Katrin obviously was comp trained.
I think proven just for 2 years actually, because I don't think it was 2
Yeah, 2 to 3 years. I mean,
she wasn't been there that long.
No, but and so that cycle I think has started to become a bit of a pattern. And I also think there's lots of other factors that play into account, like, do you live there? You know, that's a big one. Like, do you live in that place, or have you had to move there? And so, you know, the sport is not necessarily at the level where it like justifies moving somewhere to do something. So it's like there's lots of other lifestyle factors that come into account. I mean, Brooke is obviously from near where Progrm had their base, so I presume that wasn't a factor. But you know, there's all these things that come.
Presumably, she'll move closer to where she's going to be training, the people she's going to be training with.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because training in remotely is tougher, isn't it?
Advantages and disadvantages.
Because Ella moved to Mallorca and improved.
This is true. Yeah, we've had
along the way, you know.
I mean, like when we had like Christoph, Gabby, Jacqueline all training together. I mean, they did phenomenally well. Like each one of them had really good finishes, produced really good results. There are advantages to that. There are also disadvantages.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we see who else do we think is going to move. Any gossip? Any rumours? Sure, we know.
There's no one.
I'm going to have to get Carmen on the job.
Yeah,
she's much better at that sort of stuff. So that's it.
Yeah.
We've got anything else to say?
No.
What's up next for the program? You've got your elite camp in October.
Yeah, so we've got the elite camp happening at the end of October. We've got the Crown releasing the trailer on Sunday. Documentary 1st of November.
Really? That's why Mano looks so tired.
Yeah, well, he looks tired because he's been away all weekend at Barcelona.
Hello. Doing his bit for the community.
And then
teen camp at Christmas.
Teen camp and Christmas. We'll be in Dubai. So yeah, we've got like a few things happening. A few athletes coming over. But yeah, we're kind of mid-September, and things are more or less planned out until Wadapalooza really is the next kind of like far side to plan out.
Who do you got going to Wadapalooza?
So all games athletes get an invite. And then we've got a few athletes doing the qualifier.
Will Ella go?
Yeah, Ella will compete at Wadapalooza.
And Moritz?
Moritz, probably not. He's going to do Dubai, so doing the Dubai...
It's one or the other, isn't it, really?
Yeah, they're close together and obviously very far apart in terms of location.
I think it's all massively different competitions, aren't they? Because Dubai tends to be like just a small group of athletes.
Yeah, they couldn't be...
Wadapalooza is like...
There couldn't be much different formats.
Fitness circuits.
Yeah. You know, you have 60 athletes in Dubai and there's usually only 40, but then in Wadapalooza you had over 2,000 with... So it is like night and day kind of styles of CrossFit competition.
Which would you prefer to go to?
I prefer the smaller format. Wadapalooza was really cool to see because you kind of see like the vibe. But just personally, I prefer that small format. Like if it's just more chill.
Yeah. Which I know is a big thing. So we're going to see Moritz, Georgios, Thiago, Mango, Jack, Ella, Luka.
Yeah, we have like 12 athletes coming. So
and more.
And more. Last weekend of October, yeah.
Come train.
Yeah.
Watch Rogue in between sessions.
Yeah, probably been just good timing because you get to watch Rogue.
I think you should all do it wearing Stetsons.
Yeah.
I can lend you my hat.
Cowboy hats.
Maybe next year you can bring me a hat in Fort Worth. That's it.